man, yours was so much better than mine. Hello everyone. Welcome again to another episode of my weird little podcast. It's me, Tia. I'm here all the time doing podcasts all the time. We have Mitchell Roudson, Mr. Spooky 13, bestie of the podcast here, famous TikToker, content creator, worst cook in America. And yeah, thank you for joining us today. How are you today?
Oh, living the dream. The dream being Nightmare on Elm Street, that is.
Yeah. Spooky season is around the corner.
It
It's
is
not
spooky season. It
it's
is
not
officially spooky
official.
season,
Yeah.
madam.
Yeah.
We are in the throes of spooky season. Halloween Horror Nights is going on. Not
True.
Scary Farm opens very soon.
Very soon.
Um,
And we're
very
gonna
soon.
we're gonna finally meet in person. And
I'm certain we've met in person before on the Queen Mary, but like you were a ghost and I was a human.
yeah. But look how the tables have turned. Now you're gonna be a ghost and I will be a human, I guess.
Well, I
But
mean, I'm still a human, but
oh, okay. Yeah. Um, but I'm very excited about knots and like I've never been, and I know you're like a
You've
super.
never been?
I've never been to Knott's Scary Farm. I've been to Knott's Berry
I,
Farm when I was like 9 years old.
I can't believe you've never been.
No, I because I was always working for Halloween. I was always in
Oh, that's right.
in
That's right.
Halloween Horror
You're
Nights
always doing, yeah,
or in.
HHN or Dark Harbor
Yeah.
or,
I've only attended.
well, this is exciting.
Yeah, I've only attended as a guest. One time I went to Disneyland during the day on Halloween. One time I went to the Queen Mary. And then as a guest, I have really not attended very many Halloween things because I'm always working. I'm the one in the Halloween thing, you know? Uh,
Yeah,
so I'm pretty excited to go like as an actual guest. So that's gonna be really fun. I don't know.
it's exciting.
Yeah, and you're gonna be our VIP guide, and I'm trusting you to know all the ins and outs of everything, of the farm. I don't know. Do they call it the farm? I don't know.
Whenever I reference Knott's Berry Farm or Not Scary Farm on like TikTok, I say my friends at the farm. So
Mm, I like that.
um you're in luck because I know that event like the back of my hand. It's I've been going to Not Scary Farm since 2009,
Mm,
but like it's my hyperfixation. So I know everything about Not Scary Farm,
awesome.
which, is helpful because this year they've picked me to be one of their social media ambassadors. And for the 50th anniversary, that's a huge thing for me. Like I'm so excited.
That is
And
so
this is going to
cool.
be a big year. This is going to be a big year for Not Scary Farm. We've got three new mazes. There's 10 mazes total this year. Back in the day, they used to do 13 mazes,
Mhm.
but they went down to nine. Now they're back up to 10. Um, five scare zones, four shows, including the return of the hanging and the return of a kind of melodrama comedy show that they used to do back in the 80s called Dr. Cleaver. So that's big. Um, they're doing like scary food this year. So they've got like a turtle pizza. It's a pizza with like it has like a Philly cheesesteak on top, but like turtle steak meat on it, which is really wild. I did not get to try that. I
I
did
don't know
try.
how I feel about that.
Oh, oh, I did try gator sausage, alligator sausage. It
Yeah.
was pretty good. It's pretty good. They have camel stew this year. Cam stew made of camel meat. They're
Like
very wild.
for some
Like
reason I'm like, are these endangered species? But like turtles and camels are not endangered species. But like
no,
my
no.
brain is like not allowing me to like think that it's okay to eat these things. But that's just
It's
my cultural bias.
it's 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 as far as I know, gator meat is actually very common, especially in the South.
Yeah.
I've had gator before, like a lot. I've had gator at Gatorland. So
Oh, wow.
um I do know that like turtle meat was very, very common in the Victorian era because in Alice in Wonderland, the mock turtle, that's because turtle soup was
Oh,
very, very popular. So they would make what was called mock turtle soup out of, I want to say baby lamb, like veal,
mm.
and which even more, just cook the turtle, don't cook the baby
Yeah, right.
lamb. um, but they would make mock turtle soup. That's where we get the mock turtle character in Alice in Wonderland, because in the Victorian era they loved to eat turtle soup. Um, I besides the like scary meats, they have like some really good food. They have spookgetti pasta pie. So it's like a spaghetti formed into a pie and baked again. So good. My mouth is watering just talking about it. Um, and they've got these amazing funnel cakes. Of course, my diabetic butt cannot handle a funnel cake. So
Yeah.
Tia, you and I are going to have to split one.
We'll just split one between like the three of us because like I don't really do sugar.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't do sugar
yeah.
either.
I
But
can't. We'll let Pat have the majority of it.
oh, he will.
But beyond, yeah, it's gonna be an amazing year.
Yeah.
Lots of shows, lots of scares, lots of hidden like tricks and treats. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, me too. Like you don't even know. You don't even know how excited. I got a whole outfit together
I
that,
know, I can't
you
wait.
know, you'll just have to it's a theme in my head that I created and you know, you'll see. I'm super excited.
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
I just want to eat a lot and, maybe do some spooky stuff, but I know Knott's is really known for their food, so I'm like yeah. I'm like sad like I never got to go to like their
I've
boysenberry festivals that they have because that sounds awesome to me, you know.
I I love the Boysenberry Festival. I love how creative, because I'm not really a berry person.
Mm.
Because I don't like the seeds in the berry. I really don't like that. But at the Boysenberry Festival, like they've got boysenberry hot sauce, boysenberry barbecue sauce, boysenberry, like the way they
Good.
infuse boysenberry and everything, it's mind-boggling. I am with like the chefs at Knott's Berry Farm, and beyond being like an ambassador there, I've for years have been telling people it's an easier theme park to deal with. Like you park literally across the street and walk over versus like the theme park down the hall, where you have to
Yeah.
park and then take a tram in. Um,
Yeah,
the
right.
food's good. Every like person working there is so friendly and helpful. Like it's very much like a refreshing day out. But enough of that. We're talking about another old West
Yeah.
experience, aren't we?
Speaking of friends of the farm, we today we are going to talk about our favorite show, and if it's your favorite show out there, we can be friends. Uh, Actually, the other day, uh, well, I'll just tell what show it is. We are talking about Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, specifically the Halloween episodes, the first two. And
Mhm.
the other day I had my two friends over. Shout out to Robbie and Melanie. But they had never seen Dr. Quinn before because we couldn't decide on what we were going to watch. And I was like, oh, well, I've been watching, Dr. Quinn a lot lately, prepping for this podcast. And they were like, what's that? And like my head spun around and I felt incredibly old. I don't think I'm older than either of them, but I felt incredibly old. And
the
I
the
was
thing
like,
is, the thing is, Dr. Quinn was on CBS in the '90s, and back then CBS kind of had this it's the old person channel kind
yeah,
of mentality. I remember my grandma watched CBS all the time, and I would be so bored with the shows on there, like Jag and things like that. And now I'm like, I can't get enough of it. Like you and I, we watch. It's like a comfort show almost. We
yeah,
watch Dr. Quinn. We watch Touched by an Angel. We watch all of these these shows that as a kid I'm like, oh, this is so boring, but now I'm like, no, this is actually a pretty good show.
Yeah. But yeah, I was like, all right, we're starting from the pilot. And like the weird thing rewatching the pilot is like half the actors are different actors
Mhm.
in the pilot,
Yeah.
which is like so strange to think about. And I forgot about that. And I was like, oh yeah, I need to explain to them that when we get to the second episode, it's going to be very different. And then, if we continue to watch this or they continue to watch it, there's going to be another horrible change where they turn Colleen 1 into Colleen 2. Uh,
Yeah, the
you
better
know,
Colleen.
yeah, I mean, the better written Colleen, like I will give you that, but
The
yeah, this is a point of
well,
contention
it's
between
oh
us.
yeah. The thing is Colleen one had little girl storylines. She had like, oh, I have a crush on Sully.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm having a hard time adjusting to Dr. Mike's working schedule. She had like little, like spoiled little girl storylines. Colleen two had the more like, I'm falling in love for the first time.
yeah,
I have to go out and go into the world, and I'm scared for that. Like she had the more womanly storylines. So that's why I'm like more into like Colleen too, because I'm like, it's more like juicier storylines they gave
yeah,
her.
yeah. I know, I totally agree. I just it bothers me that Colleen all of a sudden seems like 2 years or 3 years younger. The actress, in my opinion, is not as good as the original Colleen. The original
Yeah.
Colleen seemed a little more I don't know. She had like a dark side that like could have come out at some point, you know. Also, there was this whole episode about her not liking being fully figured and like the boys at school making fun of her figure and everything. And then they cast this completely flat-chested girl later on and I'm like, so we're just going to forget about that whole thing. Okay. you know, that's that's fine. But yeah, we should get into our episodes.
So, Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman is set in the Old West. I believe it's set in 1870. It's set like post Civil War. Um, and because it was a TV show in the 90s, it had holiday episodes. It had Halloween. It had 3 Halloween episodes. It had a few Thanksgiving episodes, and every single season had a Christmas episode. Um, the thing is, they did have Halloween back then, but it wasn't like trick or treating, that kind of thing. Um, they did tell like ghost stories, but really Halloween was celebrated by kids like doing damage to property. Like they would like black out windows. They would steal the gate, the door to your gate. They would put your front door on upside down. Like it was literally just kids wrecking havoc, setting fire to chicken coops. Um, and there would be a lot of like games like fortune telling games which they bring up in this episode of Dr. Quinn, season 2 episode 3, titled Halloween. Each of the Halloween episodes is like Halloween, and then the next one is Halloween 2, and then the next one's like Halloween 3. So
Yeah,
they weren't very
pretty
creative with their
pretty creative.
titles in the Halloween episodes.
Was it you that
um
I told I was watching Halloween 2 and you asked me if it was the
and
Rob
I
Zombie?
was like, which one, the original or the Rob Zombie
I'm like,
one?
no, of course it's Dr.
And then
Quinn.
yeah, I was like, oh yeah, duh, Mitchell. So the episode begins with the kids. Dr. Quinn has inherited basically 3 children: Matthew, Colleen, and Brian. Matthew is the oldest. Colleen is the one that T and I have our grand feud about, and
Well,
Brian is the youngest.
yeah, Colleen won.
Colleen one, and both of these Halloween episodes involve Colleen one. I
Yes.
don't think Colleen two even got a Halloween episode. Um, so all of the kids are in the barn. It's semi late at night, and they are literally holding a séance. They're like holding hands and calling out to the ghost of Running Arrow. They're calling out to the ghost of Running Arrow, which is this great Cheyenne warrior. And the legend goes that if you hear a coyote howl, a wolf cry, it's him. So they're holding hands, they're like Running Arrow, and then they hear the wolf cry. So then it moves on to Colleen, and Colleen wants to call on Abraham Lincoln. And then they're like, "Oh, do you feel that? It's chill in the air. It's him."
What?
And then
How did
little bro
like that's like who picks Abraham Lincoln though? Like,
Colleen picks Abraham Lincoln because she's a goody goody. She's like little schoolgirl, you
yeah.
know. She opened the town library. She wants to talk to him about things. Brian, of course, Brian being the youngest, he wants to tell that to the mom. And there's like a moment where all the kids like look at each other like, should we? And then like, they do, and nothing happens. But as they're calling out to the mom, Dr. Quinn like kind of interrupts the seance. She's like, "What are you all doing out here?" With her like, "I'm a British woman, but I'm trying to disguise my British accent." Like I love Jane Seymour, but honey, just do a British accent. They should have just wrote that she was from England instead of like Boston or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she interrupts the séance. They don't feel anything for their mother coming through, and it kind of affects Brian. And throughout this episode, it's the theme of this episode is really kind of being haunted by memories, which as we'll see. Um, so the next morning, they're all having breakfast, and Harlequin romance novel model Sully the Mountain Man is there, like doing breakfast with them. And the children are talking about the seance they had. And Dr. Quinn's very much like, ghosts don't exist. Don't be silly.
Yeah.
And Sully, I love the character of Sully, but I also realize that like he's kind of a problematic character
He's a little
because
machismo, sometimes.
well, I think more that like that every like Cheyenne backstory we get is from Sully. Like Running Arrow will tell us, not Running Arrow, I'm sorry, what's his name? The medicine man.
Cloud,
Cloud
ooh,
dancing.
cloud
Cloud
dancing.
dancing will tell us like he'll tell us things, but most of the Cheyenne culture is explained to us through Sully. And I'm just like, oh, it's kind
Yeah.
of it's kind of like anime fans who like hyperfixate on Japan, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so Sully tells them a story of, he kind of explains, and I looked into this too. I went into research mode. He kind of explains the Cheyenne belief in the afterlife, how they basically believe that we have two souls. One dies physically with us when we die, and one kind of wanders and watches over the families, which is not explained in this little breakfast nook talk. Um, Sully explains a god Ukatanka who watches over souls, and on a full moon they leave out sweets to appease him. Very much kind of like, hey, does that remind anyone of anything? Hey, Halloween, trick or treat.
Mm.
Um, I went into research mode because I wanted to like see the like basis of this kind of legend. Like, is this actually like a legend or folklore that they share? I could not find a single thing. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. That just means that my research, um, my
Yeah.
research kind of stops there. Um, so Sully's talking about like all of these like improvements he can do on the homestead. Dr. Quinn moved into basically the home that Sully built for his wife, who passed away in childbirth, and so like she's kind of cozying up to him, and she's kind of not okay with the idea because she feels like she feels like she's there, but it's not really her home. So as she's like cozying up to Sully and they're like about to kiss, a picture frame falls off a shelf onto the floor, and Dr. Quinn picks it up, and it's a picture of her and the kids, and it's like, ooh, what was that? Kind of
Yeah.
thing. Um, but during breakfast, they're also talking about Halloween in Colorado Springs. Like, what do they do? And the kids tell her this is, I think, her first Halloween in town. They're like, oh, we have like a costume contest. We eat nuts and apples and sweets. We do an apple peeling where we peel an apple peel and we toss it over our shoulder, and it'll form into the initial of who we're going to marry. And Brian, the littlest kid, little SHI, he's like, no, you must probably gonna make a big old ass. And I'm just watching this. I'm like, you little.
Brian is officially
Which
he's the worst.
he's he's Sean Tuvey. If you are listening to this, I apologize for how much we're going to hate on Brian in this episode. He does grow. Yeah. He does grow in later seasons, but in the first few seasons, and especially in this episode, he is a little jerk.
So thing about Sean Tuvey is he's actually married to one of my former classmates at AMDA. And he came and saw my showcase at AMDA, and I'm sure he is a lovely person. I did not get to meet him.
Oh, yeah.
I did see him in the audience, and I'm sure he's great.
One of my dear friends, she used to be a skipper in Florida's Jungle Cruise. And I guess Sean Tuvey was a Jungle Cruise skipper back then too. So like she knows him like personally. So there is probably a chance that Sean Tuvey may somehow listen to this. So again, we apologize.
Oh yeah. And his wife Marianne, she's lovely too. If they're still married, great. But yeah. Brian is purposely written to be a little shit. I was watching the pilot episode the other day, and there's a lot of storylines where Brian's like actions cause really bad results.
Oh God, yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and not only that, like the whole thing is like, oh, Mr. Bray's such a grouchy old man. Oh, if I had a small child in my general goods mercantile store putting his dirty fingers through every single piece of candy in there, I would be a grumpy old man too.
Yeah, right.
So Sully's very much like, oh, I can make a room for Colleen. I can do this, this, and this. And Dr. Mike says, I can't. I'm not, I'm finally just settled in. I can't do this. And they kind of leave it at that. The next immediate scene is all of the students in like the elementary school sitting around talking about witches. And one of the kids is like, did they really burn those witches in Salem like teacher said? And I'm just like screaming at the TV. I'm like, teacher is lying to you children. There were no witch burnings in Salem. They were all hanged, not burned. They were hanged.
Exactly.
And one man was pressed. I have in my notes here historically inaccurate, like underlined and circled.
Yeah.
So it causes them to start talking about like how to spot a witch. And I'm like, okay, some of these things I'm like, okay, where did you get that? Okay. So like a witch will fiery red hair and they love to wear all black. And if you see them in a mirror, you'll see their warts. And water melts them. And then I look up when the Wizard of Oz was written, because I'm like, okay, that is 100% from the Wizard of Oz. These children do not have access to this book yet. Because again, Dr. Quinn takes place, I want to say 1870. Wizard of Oz was written in 1900. That's when it was published. And that they love black cats. And if they try to get your clothes, that's so they can put a hex on you, so that they can fatten you up and eat you. Like these kids are like bouncing back and forth. One thing I did notice is usually in the Halloween episodes, there's a scene where someone at the school puts a thought in Brian's head about like how he's going to horribly die. So,
oh my goodness.
So he's getting like all wound up, and like it ends with him just like having this expression like, what? And the immediate scene after that is kind of, so in Dr. Quinn there's always a medical thing. It's part Western drama, part medical drama.
Yeah.
And there's always a medical thing in each episode. So we go to the barbershop, and Jake Slicker, the town. I don't think he's the town's mayor yet, but he's running his barbershop and he's shaving this man. And Lauren Lauren Bray, the owner of the general store, he's just chilling there because I guess they chilled out at the barber shop all the time. He's chilling there and he's reading a newspaper article about, like, I have in my notes here, Lauren is reading a true crime blog. It's like all about this gruesome murder that happened two towns over. And then like Jake's like, well, gruesome things like that usually happen this time of year in Halloween. And I'm just like, okay, Jake Slicker, continue just shaving that man. So he finishes shaving him, and he's like, "Get up, sir. You know, if you need a place to sleep, they rent out beds at the saloon. Blah blah blah." And then like Lauren's like, "I think he's dead." And then I noticed here, Jake goes into the man's pocket, pulls out 2 bits for the shave, and then goes and gets Dr. Quinn. He's like, "Well, might as well get paid for this."
Exactly. That's so funny.
So the immediate scene after that, they go from the it's like, well, where's Dr. Quinn? She's at the general store with Brian, and they're looking through costumes, and it's kind of historically inaccurate again, because back in the 1800s, if you were going to wear a costume for Halloween, it would be like sacks. It would literally be like sacks, like hobos and things like that. But she's like picking out costumes like pirate, or how about we put this bandana around you and you be an outlaw? And Brian's like, oh, everyone's gonna be an outlaw. And then she picks a clown costume. She's like, what about a clown? And then little Brian's like, clowns ain't scary. Which I'm like, I have that written in my notes because I'm like, well, yes, that's correct. Clowns ain't scary. And then Dr. Quinn grabs like this paper mache mask, puts it up to her face, and goes like, like it was the most out of character moment. And Brian's like not impressed. She's like, what about this mask? Isn't it scary? And Brian kind of reveals to Dr. Quinn he's never had a store-bought costume. He's always had a costume that his mother sewed for him. So at that moment, Jake comes running in. Dr. Quinn, we need you at the barbershop. And Dorothy, who is fiery red hair, she's wearing a black shawl because she is a widow. She's ticking all these boxes. She's intently watching Brian as this whole conversation goes on. So Dr. Quinn is hurried over to the barbershop, and they have someone in the chair covered up, and Dr. Quinn goes to inspect the body. So there's a dead man in the chair. Dr. Quinn goes to inspect the body, and Lauren Bray, the owner of the general store, jump scares her because that's an appropriate thing to do. So I literally have in my notes here that, Lauren, a man died in a chair just a few moments ago. You should have some respect for the dead. So I guess Jake moved the body into like a bathtub in the back room. So they go back there to look at the body. It's not there. And Dr. Quinn's like, I am not having this cruel prank. Meanwhile, Brian has been left at the general store. And I have a note here. It's all Dorothy creeping on Brian. So like, Brian's talking about how he's never had a store-bought costume, and Dorothy's like, oh, I just love Halloween. Like, it's very much like kind of getting us in the mood that like, oh, Dorothy might be a witch. She's talking about how much Halloween's her favorite time of year. And then a black cat just shows up out of nowhere. And Dorothy starts telling like, I just love black cats. And then like Brian's like, hamina, 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 I need to get out of here.
Yeah, and like we've never seen a cat in Colorado Springs.
We have never seen a cat in Colorado Springs. And then
before or after this, you know?
Yeah. They mentioned that there's multiple black cats too. That like there's just black cats appearing at the store. I think Brian says something like, there's been cats. And I'm like, cats? I see just one cat. So he's all weirded out. He's getting the ideas in his head that like Dorothy is a witch. Um, the next scene, it's in the homestead, and you hear like, ooh, you get like wolf howling in the background, crickets chirping. It's lit by the full moon, kind of thing. So Dr. Quinn's in bed, and she hears a baby crying, the sound of a baby crying. And she follows it. And it's very much like Crimson Peak. She's got like her like 1870s nightie on, and like she's got her lantern, and she's like going, and it draws her to the barn. And she gets to the barn, the crying stops, and then she sees a crate, and the crying starts again. And she goes to the crate, opens it up, and it's a rocking horse, like a rocking horse that's been built. And for a brief moment, she sees out of the corner of her eye a woman like in like blue light, and she just disappears, and it kind of like startles her. And that wakes up Matthew, and I never realized that Matthew slept in the barn like an animal.
Oh yeah. I
I
forgot he
always,
did that at first because
I
he
always thought, yeah, I always thought that he lived like in the house with them. No, he sleeps like on hay in a loft in the barn.
yeah, I
Like,
forgot about that.
I was like, okay. And I said, I have a note here: wakes up Matthew, who sleeps in a loft in the barn like an animal. So the next morning, Sully shows up again, and he's got like construction supplies to work on the building, not the building, the home improvement. And Dr. Quinn's, she's not having it anymore. So they have like a little tiff. Like it's first of all, he's like not wearing sleeves. It's like, oh, this is for the ladies. This scene is for the
Yeah.
ladies. You know, sweaty Byron Sully flexing his biceps, lifting up heavy like crates and things. And Dr. Quinn's like, I just don't feel right. I just don't feel right doing this. Um like they have literally like three arguments in this episode about him doing home improvement.
It's like just
So
let it
Brian
go,
goes back to the
Sully.
yeah, Sully, it's not gonna happen. Just
Yeah.
stop. So Brian's at the general store again. Like, why is this kid always at the general store? Does like he's either like trying to eat all the candy, or he's like in one episode he like goes through like a kleptomania phase and steals a toy train from one of the shelves. Like
Yeah.
Mr. Bray has every right to shoo Brian out of the store with a broomstick. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Right.
So he's looking for Mr. Bray probably to like steal candy from him. And Dorothy's there. She's like, "Oh no, he's out getting decorations for the Halloween party." But she's fully cuddling with this cat now. The cat that like mysteriously appeared one day.
Mhm.
She's fully cuddling with it, carrying it around. And I have a note here: the cat distribution system. You know this, the meme of like a cat shows up. Well, it's yours now. The cat distribution system. Um, so Brian has like a little mirror because remember, if you see a witch in a mirror, you can see their warts. Which I
Mhm.
have never heard that lore, but he's like, you got a little bit of dirt on your chin, Miss Dorothy. And Miss Dorothy's like, and he like pulls up the mirror to her. She's like, well, why don't you just wipe it off for me? Like she kind of pushes his hand out of the way, and he's like, drat, foiled.
Mhm. That's funny. You know,
So while this
kids
is
just
all
kind of make shit up though, so who knows
kids
what.
do make, yeah, they do make shit up because in Halloween, the third Halloween episode, these little boys on the schoolyard make up a total like urban legend story, get Brian all wound up, and it was nothing. Like everyone in town's like, they're just making that up, Brian.
Yeah.
Um, so so while this is happening, Dorothy's like, let me get your jacket. I'm going to wash it for you. You've been so kind to me. I'm going to be kind to you now. And Brian, like, shits a brick. Pardon my French. He's like terrified because he's been told by the kids at school, if a witch gets your clothes, she's getting ready to put a hex on you.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, no, no. And she's like, well, I'll give it back to you, silly. And he mentioned something, again, going with the theme of the episode, but my ma sewed it for me.
Mhm.
Um, so that kind of sets the plot third. The Dorothy is a witch plot.
Yeah.
The next scene is in the saloon with our favorite characters, Hank and Myra. Hank,
Yes.
my mom. I was watching this with my mom, and she sees Hank, and she's like, "Who is that Fabio character over
Oh
there?"
yeah. Hank is I find him much more attractive than Sully. Sully's a bit much and he's a bit I don't know. They just try too hard with him whereas Hank has like the actual bad boy thing going on, and I don't know. I like him better, but
The thing that's the things I love about Hank are, yes, he is a terrible person. We
hmm,
cannot ignore the fact that he's a terrible person. But when his grandma visited town and he like had to put on a good show for her, and then at the end he just revealed to her, I run the saloon. She's like, "Oh, that's all right, my Hans."
yeah.
Yeah, like
Or like the
it's
one time we see his son, he's kind of an
oh
okay
God.
guy in that episode.
And then they ship the son away to a boarding school and we never see him again.
We never see Joseph Gordon-Levitt again.
Yeah, we are going. For those of you who have not seen a single episode of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman, we just went on a tangent of about like
Yeah.
six different episodes. So we're
Uh,
in the saloon.
yeah, yeah. Sorry, I was
So we're
gonna.
in the saloon.
Yeah,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was gonna go on
No,
another tangent. We're gonna stop. Go
go on
ahead.
your tangent. Say it. Say it.
Oh, I was gonna say when I was showing my friends the pilot or the first, I think we watched the first three episodes of Dr. Quinn, and like Horace showed up. I was like, don't fall in love with Horace. He's a bad person. And they're like, but he seems like such a nice guy. And I was like, don't like him. Don't like Horace.
Don't like Horace. No, Horace is a nice guy, but he's he he's someone who is very insecure about himself.
Yes, that's
That's what it comes down to. And he the character we meet in the scene is Myra. Myra's the person that T is dressed up as. She is the saloon girl. She's got a heart of gold. She's under contract with Hank, so she can't really leave this kind of possessive relationship.
yeah.
Hank tells her, "Why don't you go drum up some business?" With his like cigar in his hand, and he does the motion.
Yeah.
And so she's like, "Okay, Hank." She goes to the table where there's this one guy and his head's down, and she's like, "Hey, handsome, want to dance?" And then she like kind of pushes on his shoulder. They're like very much tropish, like, "Sir, sir," and he like slumps over, and Hank comes up, and he's like, "Oh, this man is dead." And then he like looks around, and is like, "It was just an accident. That's all, folks. Just an accident." So they take him out of the saloon, and Hank and Myra are running to Dr. Quinn's office. They put him like in the back of like a hay bale on a wagon. This poor man, like they're just putting him in like random places. Um so while they're doing that, while they're trying to get Dr. Quinn to like see the dead man, and again she doesn't see him. She's like, "Well, where is he?" And then like Hank's like, "I just put him right there." And she's like, "Did Jake Slicker put you up to this?" Because Dr. Quinn thinks that everyone in town is just playing a mean Halloween prank on her,
Yeah.
and she's a working woman. She doesn't have time for this. um so we cut again to Brian. This is what I call the Halloween in town scene. Whenever there's like a Halloween special, they always have a scene set in the town showing Halloween decorations, and like every house is decorated. And so it's outside the general store, and there's hay bales, there's pumpkins. It's very like Halloween, and there's a big barrel of apples that a black cat is sitting in. Not, very not hygienic. Um, so they like Dorothy's like dabbing her face with like a hanky. Like Brian's like, "Warm day, isn't it, Miss Dorothy?" And she's like, "That it is, Brian, that it is." And then she like grabs the cat and starts cuddling with it again because it's the prop. They rented the cat. They might as well use it in as many
Yeah.
scenes as they can.
I wonder
So
how many cat scenes they had to film on like one day. They're like, we're filming all the cat scenes on
We're
this
filming
day.
all of the cat scenes today, okay?
When I
Today is
used to,
nothing but Dorothy with the cat.
yeah. When I used to do background, when there was like, they only had us so many background people for a day because they had to pay us all. They would like film all of the scenes with the background on the specific day. And then sometimes they would like move us around. So it always looked like there was more
Oh yeah.
people.
Yeah.
And they had us sometimes change hats and jackets, sometimes to seem like different people. Um, you know,
Yeah.
that's how I felt about this cat is that they're like filming all these scenes and kind of moving it around, making
And
it
they probably had multiple cats too, because like
yeah,
like this cat is for this motion. This cat is trained to look into the camera. This cat
yeah.
on there's certain things that the cats are trained to do. Um, so he has a glass of water in his hand. Like, warm day, isn't it, Miss Dorothy? How about I give you some of this water? And Miss Dorothy's like, well, that would be really sweet. And he does the worst child acting ever in this scene. When he fully takes the glass of water and tosses it in her face. And he's like, oops, oh, I'm so clumsy. And she's like, well, Brian, it's the thought that counts. None of the water gets on Dorothy, so he can't test that theory either. Because
Yeah.
Brian's going through all the testing to see if she's a witch. Um, and then it's so funny. So after he splashes water on her, Dorothy's like, "Oh, Brian, you're so sweet. I could just eat you up." And Brian's like, "No." So Matthew comes and he takes Brian home, and that's the end of that scene. Um, Dr. Quinn is in bed in the next scene. It's very much like the previous at home scene. The moon is in the sky. There's wolves howling. She's in her nightie, and she wakes up and the ghost is in front of her, and she's like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "My name is Abigail." So the ghost finally introduces herself to Dr. Quinn. Um, One thing I did notice in this episode is they leave it vague if Dr. Quinn is actually being haunted by a ghost or if it's just things she's dreaming.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time you actually see the ghost, she's either in bed or just woken up from bed and might be sleepwalking. So the next day, she takes the rocking horse to to Sully, the one that she found in the crate, and she wants him to fix it up because she feels that this is why the ghost is haunting her. And Sully is not having it. Sully's like, "You don't want me to fix up the house, but you want me to fix up this rocking horse?" She's like, "Well, if you don't, Robert E. will." And he's like, tosses it in the fire. It's so dramatic. Sully is such a drama queen in the scene. Um, and he's like, "Why don't you want the house fixed up?" And she's like, "I just feel it's so permanent." And you have to think, in Dr. Quinn's point of view, she's living in the house. The man that she's currently courting, I don't think they've gone courting yet, but the man that she's shown interest in, he built this house for his wife and the child they were supposed to have together. And now she's in there and she's like, oh, this is
Yeah.
awkward.
Yeah.
So the next scene, Brian is at school again, and Colleen One is there, and they're playing Ring Around the Rosie and Jacks, and whatever you play in 1870 elementary school. And he's making a fool of himself. He's telling them that we've got witches and that Miss Dorothy's the witch, and the kids are kind of believing him. He says, "You don't believe me? Well, come tonight. I'll show you. I'll show you." And then I have notes here. Colleen is just rolling her eyes. She rolls her eyes, takes a deep breath, grabs Brian, and walks him away. Get out of here. Um, the next scene, Dr. Quinn visits Abigail's grave, Abigail Sully, and she brings flowers. And she has Mr. Bray, Lauren Bray, who was Abigail's father, which I keep forgetting about.
Yeah.
I always forgot that because that was in the pilot, and I watched the pilot ages ago. But he meets her at the grave, and she brought her Dr. Quinn brought Abigail's favorite flowers to the grave. And he says that's very thoughtful. And he starts telling Dr. Quinn kind of what type of woman she was. She was quiet, she was reserved. And then Dr. Quinn's like, so basically the opposite of me. um, and Mr. Bray is laughing, and she says, Lauren, I've been in this house for over a year and you haven't visited. Is it because it was Abigail's house? And then Lauren's just like, could be, or it could be that you just haven't invited me. And it's like, ooh, burr.
Right.
um, we then cut to Grace's diner, where a mysterious man is eating a plate of meatloaf. And if you haven't caught on what's going to happen at this scene, you haven't been watching the episode.
Yeah.
So he's eating meatloaf, and Matthew comes in, and Grace is like, she flat out says, oh, there's open tables, the rush has just passed. And Matthew sits down at this table with this stranger, and I'm like, there are open tables, Matthew. There are open tables. And I wanted to point out how his hair was 90s hair. Like so Matthew had like the 90s like heartthrob haircut, the like JTT kind of haircut, Jonathan Taylor Thomas. And it kind of takes me out of like shows that are set in like a certain time period when the hair or the clothing is very modern.
Yeah.
Because I've been watching with my mom, I've been watching When Calls the Heart, the Hallmark Channel show. The first season, they do a pretty good job of having like semi period appropriate hair and costuming. Season 2, they throw that all out the window. They are all wearing like modern haircuts, clothing from Old Navy and the Gap that kind of look 1910s ish. I'm just like, okay, I'll suspend my disbelief, I guess. So Matthew with his 90s hair sitting at this table with this random man eating meatloaf, and the man like slumps over on the table, and Matthew's like, sir, I would fake dead too if you sat next to me, like without even asking at a restaurant. Yeah. And I know there's a reason in the plot why her restaurant is all outdoors, because like no one would rent a building to her or anything. Yeah. But come on, you can't run that restaurant when it's rainy. You can't run that restaurant when it's too hot.
This is the only restaurant in town. Everyone eats there, and her food is so good. Like, come on, just rent her a building now.
It's the only, unless you want to eat like at the Loon, because I think in an episode that like there's food at the. I'm like, what is Hank serving? Who cooks that? Does Myra cook it?
Right. Like, exactly. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. So that's yeah. So the next scene, it's nighttime. It's right outside the general store, and all these kids are snooping around. Yeah. And I'm like, where are your parents? All right. So where are these children's parents? It is probably like 10 p.m. They all live like in like the country, so they had to walk out here. So they're snooping in the windows, and they see Dorothy come in with what looks like a body with a sheet over it, and they all freak out and run away. I love that Colleen's there, just like keep an eye on Brian to make sure he doesn't like get into like any bullshit.
Yeah.
And, she just like gets an eye on, like, okay. So for anyone who knows, it is a dressmaker dummy that she's putting in the room. Like, but to the kids, like, oh my god, it's a boy! She's got a child. They cut again to Dr. Quinn in her bed. It's like, oh god, she's having another dream. So she's in bed again, and the ghost of Abigail shows up with the flowers, tosses them at her. My notes here: Abigail, don't want your flowers, Dr. Mike. And Dr. Mike's like, why are you haunting me? This isn't fair. And Abigail's like, listen, honey, you're living in the house my husband built for me. You have 3 beautiful children. I never got to see my child. She's like giving Dr. Quinn all sorts of like drama. I have a note here. This scene was written by a man. 2 women, 1 a ghost, are fighting over Sully. Like, this is very like not the
Yeah.
best. Oh, this is a man wrote this scene because it's too like they're fighting over Sully. It's like, but Dr. Quinn's like, we could have been friends. Um, and then we cut to Brian, and he's breaking into Grace's room. Like he's literally breaking into the general store. All right, so Brian has broken in to Dorothy's room at the Gazette slash general store.
Yeah.
The cat's there. I keep forgetting to bring up that the cat's there because they probably filmed this on the same day that they all the other cat scenes. He goes to the dressmaker's dummy because he thinks it's a body. I'll give him this. He's being brave at this scene because first of all, he broke into a potential witch's house. So he pulls back the sheet over the dressmaker dummy and sees Satan. Like it's a devil costume in front of him. But he knocks it over, it falls on him. He's screaming his head off. And Dorothy's like, what's happening in here? And he's like, the devil, the devil. And the children that had followed him start chanting, witch, witch, witch. And they toss like rocks through the window, like, oh my God, you little pieces of.
Right.
Anyways, so Dorothy walks outside to see what's going on. And one of the children, who I think is famed 90s child actor Adam Wiley,
Oh, yeah.
tosses water on her, like a whole bucket of water on Dorothy. And Dorothy's like, what did I do? And so she goes back inside and like all the kids are like, oh no, because she didn't melt in front of them. So Brian goes in and they have a really touching scene. Like I started crying when I was watching this because Brian kind of reveals that he misses his mom, and there's times where he thinks that she doesn't remember him because he's having trouble remembering her. Okay. So Brian is talking to Dorothy about how he feels that his mother's forgetting him, forgets what he looks like, because he's forgetting what she looks like. And she didn't appear during the seance. And he's like, everyone did. Even Abraham Lincoln came to the seance. And I'm just like, I remember that line. Like it stuck with me. So she tells this sweet story about how after Matthew and Colleen were born, his mom still wanted another little boy. And so she tried, and Dorothy's like, maybe what you need is some luck. So one day after a picnic, Dorothy and their mother went out and they looked for four-leaf clovers, and they found one, and she gave it to the mother, and they had Brian shortly after that. So she gives the four-leaf clover, which she had, kept away in her family Bible. She gives it to Brian. It's a very sweet scene. And I cried watching, like, oh. The next scene is the Halloween party. The moment we have all been waiting for, the Halloween party. So they're showing the Halloween party. Everyone's bobbing for apples. There's jack-o'-lanterns. There's pumpkin pie. Grace's famous pumpkin pie, too. She mentions that, like, oh, honey, you should come to the party. I'm going to have my famous pumpkin pie. So they do the Halloween costume contest. Third place is Grace, and she's dressed like a princess with like a little porcelain doll mask. Second place is Brian in the devil costume that Dorothy sewed for him. And first place is the Headless Horseman. So this big like horseman costume with a like football shoulders and stuff like over this man's head. Yeah. Way too detailed for 1870s Colorado Springs, but I'm going to allow it.
Yeah.
And then Jake Slicker's like, well, what's your name, sir? And he like hands like a dummy head to him. And I'm like, okay. So he takes off the costume. Everyone screams because it's the dead man that most of them had seen. And then he faints. So Dr. Quinn in her, like, she's wearing like a sexy witch costume too. Like it's like low cut and like very like shows off her shoulders and her décolletage. I'm like, Dr. Quinn, this is not an appropriate costume. Yeah. So she rushes him to her clinic, and she does like her doctoring, and she looks him over, and she's like, "Sir, you have what we know as catalepsy." And she explains that it causes your heart to slow down, and you get cold, and you fall over, like you go into a deep sleep, and people think it's death. And there's a really cute line that he says here, like, "Why did everyone scream when they saw me?" Yeah, and Dr. Quinn's like, "Well, you had the scariest costume, of course." Um, oh, I think our power's out.
Uh-oh.
That that explains why.
Ooh.
Yeah. Oh no, it's Dr. Quinn. She's haunting me.
Oh, when
So
hold on. When did Sleepy Hollow come out? Is that even like
yes, it is. The legend of Sleepy Hollow is true to the time frame because it was written in, I want to say, 1800. No,
okay.
1818. No, was it 18? It was written in like the early 1800s, because I
Okay.
remember Sleepy Hollow had their like 100th anniversary, like 300th anniversary or something like that recently.
Okay.
Um, so beyond that, they had they cut to the house again one last time. Dr. Quinn's in, she's like sleeping on a rocking chair. And she had brought the rocking horse to, she brought the rocking horse to her, to the grave of Abigail, kind of like to appease the ghost. And
Mm.
Abigail's ghost appears to her, and they have a conversation. And she says, "You know what, Abigail? We could have been real good friends." Which I was like, "Oh, that's sweet, Dr. Quinn." Um, and that's kind of the end of the episode. The last scene is her going outside, and Sully's playing with the kids. And she says, "You know what, Sully? I think I'm ready to start those house repairs. After all, we're going to need the new roof soon." And the kids are like, "Really? I can have my own room?" And she's like, "Yes, yes, you can. When are we gonna start? Right now." And then like fade to black. Oh, it's a sweet scene. We
Yeah.
had everything. They had everything in that episode. They had ghosts. They had a man who was dead walking around. They had witches.
Multiple A, B, and C plot lines.
There was
You know?
multiple plot lines. There was like everyone in the town had their moment except for Horace. Horace stayed home today.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God. They had Adam Wiley, you
they had
know?
Adam. They had famed '90s child actor Adam Wiley.
Oh my
They
goodness. So Adam Wiley was a scare actor for Halloween Horror Nights. Like, and like true, this is a true thing.
yeah,
And
no,
I
I
was,
know, I know he was. It was like he was in like the Purge scare zone.
yeah, and like I didn't know who he was, but like everyone was like obsessed with him and like John Murdy was like always putting him in like the training videos. And like, I'm like, why is everybody obsessed with this like one scare actor? Like, who is he and why is he like so special or whatever, you know? And I was just like horribly confused by it. And then I was watching like Children of the Corn, like part 3. And I was like, oh my God, there's that guy. And the other day, he was on Touched by an Angel. And
He was untouched by an angel.
yeah,
He's Adam Wiley was like a big child. He was in
yeah,
everything. He was
yeah.
in Crayola Kids Present. He was in Picket Fences. He was on Dr. Quinn. He was in Touched by an Angel. He was like he was on Seinfeld. He was like, if you need like a precocious child,
Yeah.
that's who you call. That was very much that's kind of, he's like one of those character actors that places a product firmly in a time era.
Yeah. I love how these child actors are now like theme park actors now.
Shout out to Adam Wiley. Shout out to Sean Tuvey.
Yeah.
Shout out to Colleen One.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness.
Jane Seymour, if you're listening to this, shout out to you as well.
Right? Right. Dude, I was watching this documentary, or not this documentary, this interview with Jane Seymour the other day, and she was like, kind of like dropping the idea that they might bring Dr. Quinn back. And I was like, do not play with my heart. Do not mess with my feelings, Jane Seymour. You know, she was saying like making it like a modern, like they're in like the 1900s now, and like actual time has
Well,
passed.
yeah, so if they did pick it up, it would be 30, it should be set like 30 plus years in the future.
Yeah.
So that would be like 1900s. I feel that it would be about her daughter, Katie, or
Oh
even Colleen.
yeah.
I feel like it would be about either of those characters. I would watch it. I'd watch the heck out of
Oh,
it.
I totally watch it.
Yeah.
I would totally watch it.
All right, bestie. You want to get started on your Halloween episode?
Yes. Now being like, stay tuned for part two. Ooh.